Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, State Board of Education rescinds mask mandate. When will MCPS? With inflation at 7%, why did County Council cap rent increases at less than 1%? And in order to fix homelessness, General Assembly considers making tent cities permanent. But first, we have a special guest today, Meredith Wellington, who will discuss Thrive Montgomery 2050. Then later in the program, we'll be joined by the president for the Montgomery County Federation of Women, Laurie Halverson. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Last week, we were fortunate to have on the show the director of the Montgomery County Planning Department at the National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Gwen Wright, who gave our audience a comprehensive overview of the ambitious reimagining of the Montgomery County Development Master Plan known as Thrive Montgomery 2050, which was submitted to the County Council for approval recently. And here today is Meredith Wellington, a former member of the Planning Board and currently the Land Use Policy Planning Analyst for County Executive Elrich. Welcome to the program, Ms. Wellington. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here, Casey, and feel free to call me Meredith. Okay,
thank you. You know, that's my legal training. You want to be sensitive to how you address someone. So from a layman's perspective, the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan would seem like a reasonable approach to stimulating growth in Montgomery County. But last week, the county executive raised certain concerns, and you're here, I guess, to address some of those issues.
Yes, I am. As a land use policy analyst for the county executive, I have worked a lot on the Thrive Montgomery plan. And I can say this, the county executive has been concerned from the very beginning because of the decision to try to impose the different housing types through what's called a zoning text amendment. This would be county-wide. It would affect all of the residential neighborhoods in Montgomery County in R40, 60, 90 and R200. And the county executive supports the smaller housing types. We already have in Montgomery County duplexes and townhouses, but he would do them through the master plan so that with every master plan, you could go through and identify locations for this housing. And his biggest concern right from the very beginning has been that when planning did their own study on this kind of housing, they found out that the units would be, the least expensive would be around 700,000 going up to 800,000. And yet the groups that planning said they needed to find this housing for in order for equity's sake and to better integrate the county, especially on the west side, those groups' median incomes were between 76 and 78,000. And they could afford a house of somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, but not houses in the price range that the new housing would cost. It's expensive because it's right near transit, which is where it should be. But that's why the master plan is important, because that way you can combine this new market rate. It's just market rate. It's just hoping developers will build it with affordable housing that is on public land or is in other ways subsidized in order to offer a range of housing, a range of prices.
So, I mean, this is not a unique problem for our area. All metropolitan areas are facing the same concerns. In New York, there was an op-ed in the New York Post that if they wanted affordable housing in New York City, that they needed to subsidize development there through their development. In today's Washington Post, there's an article from Arlington. What size house is too big? Should McMansions be really multi duplexes or quadplexes. So this is something that the county has to struggle with, because there is a dearth of affordable housing throughout the county, not just in the western part and the eastern part. So how do you stimulate that, Meredith?
Stimulate the housing through
Yeah.
jobs. Through jobs. This is another area in which the county executive disagrees with the Thrive plan. The Thrive plan assumes that if you build lots of attractive housing in, well, they don't even require it to be near transit, but lots of attractive housing and make an attractive community, that the jobs will come. The county executive says just the opposite. The jobs, when the jobs come, then the housing will follow. And again, planning doesn't listen to its own studies. I mean, first there was the study on how much the housing cost, and they didn't really respond to that. And they've also got an excellent study on White Flint, where the developers in White Flint said, we're not building the buildings that have already been approved because we don't want to take a risk on that kind of expensive housing when job growth isn't where it should be. So this is a big area. Job growth, economic development, the environment. The executive takes exception to the failure to even have a chapter on the environment in what is our general plan. It's our roadmap for the future until 2030. And of course, we need to address the environment in a systematic way. We're all seeing the changes in the climate right here in Montgomery County with flooding. Look at what our weather's been like this week. If it's Friday, it must be blizzard. If it's Saturday, it must be Miami. It's very confusing.
Well, I appreciate the confusion. It is a transition from winter to spring. I think we're not in Arizona or San Diego where the weather is the same all year round. But I see in the plan, and the plan follows along some of the things that the county executive certainly wants to do with their proposals about bus rapid transit and other transportation issues. So there are, I assume, are good things in the plan, as well as some things that need to be worked on.
That's right. There are good things in the plan, but unfortunately, the goal of the plan seems to be more oriented towards housing than any other aspect of the plan. In other words, the major proposal, the only thing that right now we know that there is interest in implementing, is the changes in the housing type and the rezoning of all the single family neighborhoods to this ZTA called the Attainable Housing Initiative. Is itself something that the council has already slowed down, which the county executive strongly supports that. But because both of these things were done together at the same time, the focus has been entirely on housing, and the rest of the things that the plan tries to do have become a footnote. And that's one thing the county executive would like to see, that the plan be fair, be equally clear and definitive in all of the chapters, not just about housing.
Well, I from a personal perspective, I'm very selfish because I would like to see affordable housing. My married daughter and her husband are struggling to find a house here in Montgomery County. I hate saying it, they're looking in Falls Church across the river, and I'm mad about that. I hate crossing that bridge. Anyway, Meredith, I want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for giving us a great presentation on Thrive.
Well, thank you. And I'll just say that new housing is on the horizon. The county executive certainly supports housing, but this just wasn't the way to accomplish it.
Well, I think, again, I've always, respected the planning department and the planning. You were a commissioner on the planning board for 8 years. You have to struggle with balancing competitive issues as to how to make our county grow. I respect that, and there's always going to be differences of opinion. So hopefully great minds will work on this and we'll come up with a positive solution.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here today. When we come back from this short break, will MCPS lift the mask mandate? And is the solution to the homeless problem permanent tent cities? Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are now joined by Laurie Halverson, who is a former appointee by Governor Hogan to the State Board of Education. Welcome, Laurie. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Laurie, the State Board of Education, your former commission, they just rescinded the mask mandate. So when will MCPS?
Yeah, I applaud Maryland State Department of Education for doing that. I think the time has been, we should have done this a long time ago. And I'm glad that Governor Hogan pushed them to vote on this issue. So now it's up to the counties to decide what they want to do. But first it has to go through the General Assembly. They have to approve it, and then it goes to the counties. Also, though some of them have already rescinded the mask requirement. MCPS was one of the last school systems to allow kids back in school. And so they may end up being the last to allow kids to take the masks off if they choose to. Last night or on Thursday, there was a meeting at the Board of Ed, and some of us were hoping that they would vote on it yesterday. Only Carla Sylvester and Rebecca Smandrowski voiced their opinion, saying that they would support relaxing of the mask mandate. The others didn't speak about it. So I think they want to wait for the CDC guidelines, which are about to come out as of our taping this Friday. And I hear that they're going to be relaxed. We're going to see probably vague, but more relaxed guidelines from the CDC. And I think that the other board members it might be possible that they will adjust their opinions to the CDC guidelines. However, they have not always followed the CDC and have done things a little more strict. So we'll see what happens. Mark Elrich is saying that we should continue that even though the county has lifted the mask requirement for us when we're just going to restaurants and things, he still says, oh, you should still do it. It's still a good idea. But the reasons he's given are just,
Well,
don't
look,
make sense.
I actually met with the county executive briefly one time to talk about this, and his caution is well intended, but I think it is misplaced in this.
Yeah,
it'll take. We're well beyond the point where masks are going to help prevent the spread, but everyone has their own opinion on this. Naturally. So
yeah, it'll take some deprogramming for a lot of people because there's so many that are just so used to wearing those masks every day. And, you don't even have to put your makeup on when you go out to the grocery store, but now you will. So if you want to take your mask off. So there's some adjustments that will have to be made, and it's not going to be easy for everyone.
I guess that's a confession on your part. So we got to go on to our next topic. And, we have the luxury today because it's just the two of us on the panel.
Yeah.
There's another issue that I was surprised that the way the county council approached this. I mean, we've just heard, about affordable housing with Meredith Wellington earlier today. And of course, last week when we had Gwen Wright on, we were talking a long period of time about affordable housing in the county. It was shocking to me that with inflation at 7%, that the county council 2 weeks ago, voted to cap rent increases at 0.04%, or excuse me, 0.04%. It just seems to me, who wants to engage in building rental properties here if there's rent control?
Yeah, I think they're trying to really show that they care for the people that have gone through some tough times during this coronavirus pandemic, and trying to make it easier for the renters. However, they don't seem to understand the other side, where we have builders who are deciding right now whether or not they want to build after the pandemic, as well as now. So there's not that much incentive to build here, knowing that we have such rent controls, at least during this pandemic period.
I was surprised, I mean, I didn't, my business is in White Flint. My law firm is located right across from the White Flint, the old White Flint Mall. And so, I followed the sector plan fairly religiously to see what's going to happen. And I was surprised when Meredith Wellington mentioned that the developers there wanted to back off and not build. There was a lot of housing in their project, and not go forward, because the assumption is that if you're near a metro and a highway, and we're only a mile from the Beltway, that affordable housing would be built and be filled immediately. So I was surprised.
Yeah, well, when you have a county council filled with people who have not been business people themselves, only Sydney Katz, I think, is the one with experience in business. The others really don't seem to understand what a profit is. They're used to spending our tax money. So, Will Jawando especially is one of the county councilmen who keeps introducing these not friendly bills to that really hurt businesses.
They're usually passed with a broad majority. So even though
that's true,
Mr. Jawando is the author, there seems to be a lot of support. I do want to shift gears since we're talking about affordable housing. There's a bill that has been introduced in the General Assembly, and this one again was another head scratcher, because it deals with homelessness, and it's been a growing problem, particularly in the Baltimore area. But they've introduced a bill that would make tent cities permanent in order to house the homeless. It seems to me that they've just given up on trying to deal with the mental health issues affecting our homeless population.
I think so. And I think whenever you see disparities where there's racial disparities in anything, it gives the Democrats a reason to file new legislation that end up hurting a lot of us. This bill, it's House Bill 304, and it's Delegate Ruth who's proposing this bill. It doesn't even mention tent cities in the bill at all. The bill is about the failure to obey section where where a lot of progressive cities have developed similar rules, and they are actually rescinding those rules now. When you look at places like LA, they've already taken away some of their tent city areas, because what it really does is when if a policeman asks someone to please move their tent because they've set up a tent somewhere in the middle of the public, they can refuse, and then the policemen, they're not allowed to arrest them and take them away.
Well, the history, and going back to the late 70s and early 80s, is when vagrancy laws were first struck down by the courts that disarmed the police from being able to address homelessness or keep people from living on the streets. And we've only seen the problems be exacerbated over the years. I think this is the wrong way to address the problem. I think the problem is there a great deal of the people who are homeless are there by choice, and it's because they have either mental issues or drug issues, and this isn't the way to do it. And
it's their own progressive policies that are creating this situation. And so now, if they do, for example, I was at Union Station during the holidays with my son. And when we walked by, there were just a lot of tents in front of Union Station. And I'm like, what's going on? What is this? And that's when I first learned that this is happening in our own DC area. And I just heard recently they finally did clean up the area and get people to move away from that area.
A survey was printed in yesterday's Washington Post of Washington DC residents saying that they supported moving the tent cities, that people had kind of gotten fed up with it. Before we go to break, and I want to talk a little bit about an idea that was floated at a meeting of businessmen with candidate David Blair, who's running for county executive. And During that meeting, I did not attend, but what was reported to me was a Mr. Blair, and I think he did this during the last time he ran for office, suggested that all Republicans should change their party affiliations for the primary and vote as a Democrat, and of course vote for him in order to have a business-friendly person as county executive. As the president of a Republican Federation of Women, what do you think about that, Laurie?
I don't like that idea. I didn't like it when David Blair suggested it the last time. I did attend one of his meetings when he ran the last time, because I did think he had some good ideas for businesses. He does seem to be the more business-friendly candidate. However, first of all, I just could never change to be a Democrat, because that's not what my philosophies are. And to have that on my record I just wouldn't want that on my record at all. I've even been asked to change Democrat because maybe I could win as a Democrat, since I have not been able to win as a Republican, but it's not in my philosophy to do it. And you have a number of races that are important in the Republican primary. You have Kelly Schultz, who is, I would say, more on the Hogan middle of the road Republican, versus Dan Cox, who is more on the right. You have those two running, and I think it's important to have your say as a Republican on which one you prefer. There are other congressional races that more people are filing now that are Republicans. We have a race in District 6 between two people that I know of. So really, I don't think it's a good idea. And I think last time they pushed for it, a very, very small percentage did switch over, and it did not make a difference. I don't think so. I just feel like it's just not, I don't like the idea. We need to really push the increase of Republicans in our county. We're already 4-1 Republican versus other parties. So I just don't want to make that number worse.
So I can see the angst in
Yes.
your whole demeanor about the thought of converting. So I won't push the issue any further, but I think it's again a novel approach to trying to get into the game anyway. When we come back, parting shots. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Welcome back. Now with parting shot, Laurie Halverson.
Yes, I feel like we can't let this whole session go today without mentioning Ukraine and what's happening there. So I just share my prayers and my thoughts about the people of Ukraine, and I'm just shocked that this is actually happening, and hope that things turn out well for the people of Ukraine. Also want to say that I support as the masks are being taken off as we walk around the county, to have respect for people who still choose to wear them. We need to respect other people's feelings, and know that we don't know their situation. They might be immunocompromised. So that's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I mean, that's a good reminder that we should treat all of our neighbors with respect, and
Yes.
Both ways. That if you choose not to wear a mask, that's a personal choice, as well as choosing to wear a mask. I'm going to follow up on your mention about the Ukraine issue. I think it's one that is very complex and very misunderstood. I come to this from a background of being someone who was very defense oriented politically, and I think that while we need to be concerned with the aggressive actions taken by Vladimir Putin, we shouldn't lose sight of the aggressive actions that are being taken by the communist Chinese. Yeah. The CCP, it's part of their title. I don't want anyone to criticize me for saying that, but it's the Communist Chinese Party. And we have a far greater adversary with the Chinese than we do with the Russians. And I wish the Ukrainian people the best. And I'm hoping that peace comes to their country very soon. I want to thank you, Laurie, for being here. I want to thank our special guest, Meredith Wellington, for being with us today. And I would like to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.